Hello. I think I'm online. Maybe. Or I'm talking to myself. Hello. So everybody in the chat, let me just have a look. Hoping you can hear me. Who do we have? Oh, we have Howard, who came on quite early, and Ali. Hello, Kitty. Young Helen, always a pleasure. Guitar. Nobody except me. Hello. Green Thumb, hello. Psyops Agent. Yes, fantastic to see some very familiar names. Hope everybody is well on this Sunday morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are. I have a slight cold, so bear with me with that. Hello, Naga Pilgrim. Hello, Sir Whitefield. Nagaland, marvellous. Well, yes, good health to you all. I've given up on tea and I'm now on hot black currant juice. So, what are we doing today? We are going to aim to talk about myth dispersal. And I say aim because I'll probably go off topic, but there's some really interesting papers that have come out recently about stories and where they come from or where they don't come from. And I thought it would be a good idea to look at some of these, especially after the latest video on the Odyssey. I've forgotten it already. That seems to have gone down really well. There seems to be quite a few views on that, which is unusual for my work on YouTube recently. So yeah, that was good. So I don't know how many of you have seen the video. Hello, young Sean. Hello, Exit. And Brian. Hello. But yes, the Odyssey is a really good example. We'll go through that, and I'll show you some of the things you can do in the database. Hello, David. Today, so and the database itself has gone through a few updates since we last spoke, I think, in terms of adding lots of data and fixing a few bugs. So yeah, we can go through all that, and I'm not too sure if there's too much research news I can share. I've been speaking to a chap in Australia who wants to, in effect, classify some First Nation Australian stories, and he's finding it difficult. And hello, Sculpture, and Braden, and Farsight, hello. So one of the things is that whilst the Bearskin Analytical Catalogue has a set of motifs for 3,494 of them, I believe, at the moment, we find that in some cultures, certainly where they're on different continents to Eurasia, the motifs aren't a normalized fit. Some appear more than others. And when you get to the Americas, for example, and you look at the First Nation tribes there, if you look at sort of them as a, I guess you consolidate all the related tribes together, so you have a number of big families. There's very little motif overlap, except for stories that have anthropomorphic beings in them, so animals that do things. Hello, Miss Manaman. So, and that's really interesting. It's interesting because why haven't they persisted with all the motifs from their Eurasian cousins? Why was there a change? But also it's interesting in how we can map myths and what we can make assumptions from looking at that data. So we'll have a little chat about that, and there's a few papers out which I'm catching up on. So for the last year or two, I have to be honest, I haven't really done too much proactive research in this field. I've been just trying to fill in the gaps and create videos and information that puts in foundations, because what you probably realize about comparative mythology is that it's really difficult to age. If you get a story, you don't know how old it is unless there's some historical fact in there, you can confirm. But we use genetics and archaeology and linguistic evolution to help understand the age of something, and that's why we use that in phylogenetics. It provides the data to understand the age of a myth, and so you're putting all this together, that allows us to, in effect, get a better understanding of when we think certain stories were told in certain places. So, let's see. Hello, Lindsay from Herefordshire. Right. So yeah, so I just wanted to talk about that today, and I say a couple of other things. So if you haven't seen it, say my latest video is on the Odyssey, but really it's a story about you. I think Sean put it really well, was in a chat. Like you go on a normal journey and you get taken to a mythical world where you have certain challenges to overcome, usually very dangerous, and eventually you get back home. And why this is different to a normal adventure story is, one, you're going off to a mythical world rather than this is happening here. But two, in effect, you can't get to the mythical world deliberately. You can only get there by accident. So that's why these stories differ to other types of adventures. Someone mentioned Sinbad, I think in the comments of the video, was Sinbad like this. And whilst Sinbad has to overcome various challenges, and it feels like a mythical world, he hasn't actually accidentally traveled there. He deliberately went there. So we can touch on things like that. So, hello, everyone who's joining. I hope you're all well. I was just giving an introduction of what I hope to discuss tonight before I probably go off topic and talk about something very different. Yes, so I don't know if you have questions about the Odyssey video, if you watched it, let me know. Otherwise, I can have a little chat here and show you some of the things about it from the folklore database, because what I try to do with this video is to show you how we can use the folklore database to supplement the information. So let me just log on. I'll do that off screen so you do not see my password. And can we log on? Oh, what? This is a bit fun. Bit worrying. There we go. Or couldn't log on there. One does not simply read mythology. Yes. So it can. There must be a way of getting a screen up. There we go. So this is the mythology database, or the folklore database, as I've now called it. So if you're not aware and you did use the mythology database, I've called it the folklore database. Don't worry, no one's hacked it. That was me just trying to give it a more generalized name, because folklore contains myth and legend and folk tales. We're calling it mythology and folklore. Whilst that is a sort of a common phrasing, I feel it's just a bit more professional to call it like this. Oops, sorry, let me turn my phone off. Don't want to be disturbed. Oh, unless someone's, let me just make sure. Yes, okay. Right, so when we talked about the Odyssey, there were two motifs involved, and they were B28 and L135. So if you've never used this database, you can look these up under the Browse Berskin motifs on the left-hand side. I'll show you one of them now. So we do that, B28, you can click on the B up the top, and that will quickly whiz you down the list. Then you scroll down a bit and you get to B28. There you go, the Travelling Transformer. So the Travelling Transformer is a traveller who has power to change the landscape and the things in it. And it's considered I don't know if Berskin called it a reflex of the Wanderer, but it's considered of the same family of stories. And if you click B28, you can see its distribution, which is predominantly in America, and it seems to be clustered, and so not a random set of cultures, because they all seem to be together. And this was a key point, because we get many people, or I get many people saying to me, "Oh, this was an archetype." People just think this naturally, where if we look at the data, amount of data we have, that doesn't look random. That looks like that story has been distributed. However, what you'll also see is a few dots in the middle of Eurasia, which was quite interesting. Now, that's fairly straightforward, but what some people may not realize we have, which is quite useful, is an option on the left called Compare Motifs. And if we click that, what we do is you can put in two motifs. Now, B28 is one of them, which we're talking about. And the other one, which I'll click, and the other one was L135, I believe. Person leaves his home. Is it 135? I think it's 135. Let's go for it. And if we click compare motifs, you actually see all of the occurrences of both those motifs together and where they occur. And as you can see, the red dots suggest where both are told, and there's very few of those. Most are either Travelling Transformer or The Wanderer. So someone's asked, I think I saw a question, is, let me go back, sorry, from David. He says, isn't the Traveller the same with the hero from the hero's journey? So the hero's journey, there isn't a motif called the hero's journey. The Traveller, because you could say the story could be told as a hero's journey, but without confusing it, yes, excuse me, the story can be told as though it is a hero's journey. It doesn't have to be, but because someone leaves their home and goes back to it and does some things in the middle, then that sounds very hero's journey-ish, if that makes sense. So yes. Right. So I just want to show you this compare motif. But what's quite interesting about this function, if we look at the distribution, what Berskin is saying is that whilst we have a clear indication that these stories are in the Americas, his view is that because we see them, we see them in Greece and we see them in other places, but they seem to be on what he said was the periphery of the Eurasian cultures. He believes that the story was originally told in Eurasia, went to the Americas, and then the story that remained in Eurasia slowly disappeared and only hung on for dear life on the edges of the culture. So I think that's quite an interesting way to look at that dispersal of data. And that's sort of what I want to show you, is that sometimes I can look at a map and you can think you can think of what the distribution probably was, depending on if there's stories in Africa or not, Australia or not, South America or not. You can sort of make an idea, but sometimes that isn't true. Sometimes other things are going on that it isn't clear from the data in the sort of geospatial awareness of distribution. So, I just wanted to share that with you, the capability of the database and as well as the distribution. So, I think I saw another question. Excuse me, I'm coughing a lot. By the way, if you do have a question, put a Q or question at the front of your comment, because it's a lot easier to see. So someone asked me, do I use AI to assist my research? So I use AI, and I use AI in two ways. One, I use it to process data. So the mythology database, for example, it takes data from a number of places, and the data set I use, let's say the Bereskin's analytical catalogue, that data is somewhat corrupted. It isn't in a standard format, which means it can't be put into a database easily. So I could go through manually and correct all 120,000 entries, which would take me a number of years, or I can write a piece of AI code, like computer code that calls AI, that looks at the data, and if it thinks it's corrupt, it fixes the corruption. And currently I have fixed, in the period of 2 weeks, I've got a Mac Mini computer running a local LLM. It's using Quen, for anyone's interested. And that has gone through, as of today, actually, I checked it. I've fixed 2,109 out of 3,494 corrupted files, of which 1,028 of them are now in the database, and the other 1,061 still have translation issues I want to fix manually. So that's one area I use it. And the other area I sometimes use it is if I'm looking for a source of something and I don't know where to begin. So let's say someone has asked me to research a topic I'm not familiar with, maybe some kind of early religious beliefs in South America, which is not my core subject. I may go to AI initially and say, so I use a tool called Consensus, and say, can you give me any papers that talk about early religious thought in South America? And Consensus is really good because Consensus doesn't hallucinate. So it only returns valid papers and actual papers. It does often return papers that aren't on topic but contain the same words, which is annoying, but it's very easy to spot that and to go through it. So from that point of view, I also use it, but there is no excuse to not read papers, no excuse not to write down notes manually from the things you see in the papers, because that's the only way you're going to learn. And I had someone a couple of weeks ago send me an article they'd written about me, telling me that my work was had errors in it, and sent me an article. And that article had multiple summaries from AI in it. And I would refuse to look at that feedback because of that. Because if you have a problem with my work and you can't even be bothered to write that down, you go to an AI to write it down, that's one, that's rude. Two, how do you know the AI is actually taking into account all the nuance? It's not hallucinating. Do you expect me to go through that and check all that? So I did write an article. I posted it on Patreon, but put it on a free tier so everybody can see it, because it was really quite long, and it wouldn't have fitted on YouTube for the YouTube members on comments. But it's there saying, if you want to tell me my work's got errors in it, please do. I'm only human. I will get some things wrong. But if you are going to do that, please ensure you do good scholarship, and ethical scholarship to do it. Get in touch with me personally and tell me what you think is wrong, and we can discuss it, but provide good data you've researched, you've written with references. I don't want to have to get a jumbled set of words that is hard to untangle, that has no references and may have been written by AI. That's just very rude. So that's what that was about. So they're the two reasons I use AI. Actually, I've lied to you. I have, as of this week, it would have been, tried to use AI to look at the computer code in the folklore database, because it was all manually written before Monday. But I put some code in and say, could you check this, make sure it's okay? And it found a couple of bugs and tweaks, and it's helped me fix those. So I've used it for that as well. But I wouldn't ever use AI to write anything for me. Just that is, if you're doing that, you're not actually learning. So so don't do that. So hello, Scott. Am I still using Claude on my Mac? Right. So on my Mac Mini, I use something called LM Studio. If you're interested, which is a program which I can download a model from. Well, you can do it all within the application, so you don't really have to worry about where it comes from. But so I load LM Studio, download a model that suits me. So I say I'm currently using Quen, but I may use Gemma soon. You put that in LM and Studio, and LM Studio has got a button saying server, and if you click that, then LM Studio acts like a computer server on the internet, in effect. And then I can write some code. I tend to use Python, and I can write the code, and it will say, let's say, get this motif data, do certain things with it to clean it up and normalize it as much as I can, and then I send it to the AI, to the server on LM Studio, and say, could you please look at this? This is the format it should be in. Some brackets may be missing, some semicolons in the wrong place, and things like that. Look at it and use your best judgment to fix it where you see problems, if there are any, and then save it as a file I can use. And that's what I do. So there isn't any Claude on that at all. It's all local. It doesn't cost me anything to run other than electricity and the cost of the Mac Mini, which is quite expensive, but it's paid for itself. I mean, even the processing it's done today on those 2,000 motifs would probably set me back well over $2,000, and the Mac Mini cost about that. And yet I've also used it to create myth themes and double check motifs and do other things. So it's more than paid for itself, which is brilliant. The only problem is I've only got one of them, and I'd love to have 2 or 3 or 4. But yeah, we have constraints, and I have to work to those constraints. But for now, it's doing the right thing. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. If you're interested. Oops. Right. Let me. See if there's any other questions. Is the Easter Bunny a divine being? No. Not in the Christian calendar. In heathenry, were rabbits or hares ever considered divine? They had some sacredness about them. I wouldn't necessarily say they were divine, though, but they certainly had some sacredness in terms of there were probably fertility rituals and rituals of the dead and things like that associated with it, depending on the locale of you're looking at. But it certainly wasn't a Christian Eastern divine thing. So another question. Hello, Kitty. Do you have a favorite archaeological artifact that relates to a myth or folklore? A favorite one? I love the Lion Man. You've probably all seen him. This chap or lady, I don't know. I think it's a man, because we think this bit is a man pouch. So I do like this, and I do have the old one. In fact, I don't know if I've shown you. Crash. Too many books. So until about, I don't know, it was 2005 or something. I may be making the dates up. The Lion Man looked like this. Only got one arm, and had a big hole in the back. And then it was decided to take the figurine or the figure apart and rebuild it, and it came rebuilt as a 2-armed creature or figurine with more of a back to it. So that's probably my favourite, the one I get asked about the most. Saying that way, I did acquire off eBay relatively cheaply a Neanderthal skull, but it's only made of resin. Because I thought I was doing a video on Neanderthals, and I thought it'd be nice to have this in it, but alas, this turned up a bit late. So, and I complained, and they gave me a human skull as well, which I've got here. So I like these. Right. So yeah. And I like my Venuses. The horned-headed snake. People quite impressed with, although it's not focusing. Oh, there we go. That's lovely. So that's from Bulgaria. A friend of mine had a collection. So yeah, they're the things I really love. But I love the Venuses. I've got little gods. I just like getting different shaped gods. I've got some masks. The mask there, that's from Hungary, and that's I believe that's the Mycenaean mask of Agamemnon there. I have some masks downstairs from Africa I managed to acquire. But I love those things that sort of ooze ritual. I love. Yeah, there's something about that, the sacredness of ritual. That, even though I'm not religious, I don't believe in these things. There is something you can feel in that, and looking at it allows me to appreciate that more. And I don't know, perhaps it probably helps me tell stories better, feeling and seeing these things. So yeah, so that's what I have and why. Right. So here's an interesting point, far sight. So I wrote a paper a little while ago about how to classify stories like myth, legend, and folktale. And this has become a bit of a problem for me. Now the paper's been well received, lots of good feedback. It's been viewed quite a few times. But what it says is that myth is in the eye of the beholder, basically. So whether a story is myth, legend, or folktale isn't based on what the story is. It's based on who's telling it and who's listening to it. That defines on whether a story is myth, legend, or folktale. So, which then makes it difficult to say, "Oh, I love this myth." Someone may not agree it's a myth, or or ask, "Why do you think it's a myth?" So that's I don't know how to manage that now, because I've sort of created a problem for myself that narratives are just narratives, and their genres could be anything to anyone. So that's my next challenge to deal with. So I've been speaking. There's a good friend of mine, John Mason. People who follow me, I know I talk about him a lot. He's a fantastic storyteller, absolutely incredible mind, and he has really little, I'll say, consideration for genre. He doesn't believe. Well, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but from our discussions, stories are stories, and how you want to classify them is up to you. And certainly there isn't a great classification system to classify anything. But he peer reviewed the paper I wrote, the classification folklore, which if you're interested in those things, I have a page I've just sort of set up and tidied up a bit on academia.edu if you want to read that. But yeah, he was very, very impressed with that in the sense that it gets over all the problems of rigidly defining things. So yeah, I just wanted to say that when people talk about these things, I'm not trying to be pedantic, but if we're trying to be good scholarship, we should be aware of these things, that these are narratives, of folklore narratives, and depending on the audience, depends on what they are. So I do like Tolkien. I think Tolkien's work is interesting fantasy. Right. So question from David: is it possible that all stories lead back to only one original story? I can't prove it. I can't prove what I believe, but I don't believe that is the case. I mean, that's why we have motifs. We have different types of stories. So, I mean, there would have been a story for hunting and a story for eating and a story for cooking and a story for going to bed and a story for death and a story for birth. I don't believe those things are so different. They couldn't have come from one story. So, yeah, I think that's unlikely. But although it's impossible to prove, it's just a probability thing. As this realm of academia is, everything's a probable. It's very rare we can say something is for sure. Right. Yeah, so the people, so Fifth are saying Tolkien seems to have ripped off the Volsung saga. Certainly, because Tolkien did rewrite or try to translate things like Beowulf, and he did this book on Sigurd, didn't he? And the like. So he's very, very familiar with the Old Norse tales. So they certainly were well within his work. Right. So someone's saying 799 Mac Mini on Amazon. So the Mac Mini on the AI front needed as much memory as I possibly could have to load the local model, which took my $600 Mac Mini to, I think it was about $2,000. But as I say, it has paid for itself. So whilst that was a lot of money, it has, let's say, done its job and will continue to do so until I eventually decide to turn it off, because it's literally running 24/7. I have a desk fan blowing air on it as well all the time just to keep it cool, because otherwise it will go really hot. So it's not a great system, but it as I say, with the constraints I have, it does a good job for me. Right. Question: the three rabbits, as it was, as it is, as it shall be, they seem somewhat to be a Christianized version of the Fates. I don't know where that story starts, but you could argue they are. Yeah, they're similar to Fates. I mean, Fates weren't the same in all cultures, but we find certainly where we see them in Indo-European culture, certainly the Western side of that, they are more aligned to that kind of thing. Definitely. Yes, I haven't really thought about that. What I could do actually be, before I go on to the other questions, is there's a story I just found out about yesterday, which Berskin noted. I think it was a couple of years ago, but so I was been a bit behind, so I've been catching up on my reading of papers. And it's apparently a very rare story. It hasn't, well, it doesn't feel like, from what I understood, it's been written down much, called The Doe and the She-Bear. So it's quite a gruesome story, and I will probably do a video about it. But sometimes people ask me to tell stories, so I thought I'll tell you. I'll stop here, and I'll tell you a story of the doe and the she-bear, and it's a story seen in a number of places, but quite a lot in North America and First Nation tribes, where they have a doe and a she-bear. But if you, there isn't one good version, but if I sort of push them all together, I can tell you a version of the story, which is really quite interesting. And it goes that once upon a time, as all good stories start, there was two women who lived together, and they both had children. And one woman was very meek. She only ate vegetables, a vegetarian, so to speak, and she was fair. And the other woman, she was quite aggressive and large and liked eating meat. And these women used to go out foraging occasionally for food, and the more carnivorous of the women went out hunting as well, and they did this. But one day the women went out to forage for food, uh, and the meat-eating woman took the other lady to a remote cave, and there she killed her, and she chopped up her body and brought it back to the house, and she started cooking the body. When she was doing that, the head of the lady screamed out, "Help me, help me," even though it's all been dismembered. And her children saw it, and children realised that this carnivorous lady was eating their mother. But they didn't do anything about it. They waited and waited, and then one day, a week or two later after this, they took the carnivorous woman's children, like the children of the vegetarian, took the carnivorous woman's children out. I said on a little picnic or something, and they took them to a cave, and it was a cave they had prepared with grass in it. So when the other children went in, they lit the grass, and tragedy struck those carnivorous woman's children, and they were screaming as fate was taking its course, and the carnivorous woman heard this, and she was running towards the cave, and the children of the vegetarian woman ran away, and as the carnivorous woman chased them, she fell over and fell down a cliff and died, and the children got away. The end. I can't say they all lived happily ever after, because they certainly didn't. And I can't imagine why this isn't a popular story. But anyway, I'm going to make a video about that. But I thought it was a really fascinating and quite horrendous story. But yeah, so there'll probably be questions about it in a minute. But I hope you liked it. Say so. That is called the Doe and the She-Bear, and I'll make a video of that probably next month. I'm going to have a week off or so, maybe the end of next week, or so I need a bit of a break. So I'll do that. But yeah, enjoy. So back to the questions. Question. So from Santiago: do myths about Neanderthals exist? We can't prove that any myths about Neanderthals exist. Not on well. Would they exist? Probably. I think it's unlikely we have any myths that directly relate to Neanderthals, although it's not impossible that some of the myths we tell today may have had their origins in certain Homo sapiens seeing either different Homo sapiens or Neanderthals or Homo erectus or something. That is a possibility, but I think it's very unlikely. That's my view. Right. Let me carry on going down. Let's see if there's any questions. So put question at the front. It's a lot easier for me to see them because I can just whiz down. Right. No. Lots of people knows. Come on. Yeah. Right. So there we go. There's a story for you. So, right. Hello, Dale. Well, hello. It's just come on. Right. So there we go. So let me just check. So the other things I wanted to show you, because I can't remember if I've shown you this. So as part of the update to the mythology database, or the folklore database, we call it, it gives you an example. So some of the numbers we're going on. So on the left are all the dragon myths from K27. These, well, K27 like dragon hero type myths. And on the left is what the database was like last month. On the right is what the database is like today. In effect, because of uncorrupting the data and reapplying it, we've basically doubled the amount of traditions we can see that tell the story, because I can look at the data in a better way. And through that, we found additional stories. So there's about 19,000 new stories I've added to the data because of that. And we got an extra 74, I think it is, motifs with stories in them. So that was something else I wanted to talk about. Just say thank you, because many of the people here are patrons and YouTube members, and your support makes that happen. And that, as I say, it's really coming on and just so good now for research. If you're ever researching something, just pop in there and have a look. So, in fact, if you remember the Odyssey video, there was a story of a Inuit. Do you remember that? I think his name was Koviak. So, if I log on, Koviak's quite an interesting character. So Koviak went out on his kayak and basically had an odyssey in his kayak, and was attacked by man-eating women, and was getting crushed by icebergs and alike. Like I said, a horrendous journey. So what I hope to do is we go back to the mythology database, research narratives, and I think his name's I think it was Koviak. Have I got that right? No. What was his name? Give me 1 second. I'll find out his name. Let's see. Sorry, I should have done a bit of research on this. I cannot see. Cannot anyone know? No one knows his name. Stories. Perhaps might have to. Kiviok, right. Kiviok. So here we go. So there was a story like the Odyssey with Kiviok in it, and so for some people who may be interested in this, I said he's quite famous. If you click Kiviok, there are actually a number of stories about him in the database. It's something I mentioned. Jeremy. But yeah, so he's like the hero of the Inuits, which I wasn't aware of. So there's probably more work to be done there in terms of trying to understand who he is. But again, this is how you can use the database. If there's a name or a creature or a character, we want to know where unicorns have stories or things like that, please, feel free to use the database. Right. Let me there's more questions. Right. So, Kitty, has there ever been evidence found of Neanderthals and humans living together? I think there was evidence of a burial where there was a human Neanderthal or child that looked like a direct descendant of human Neanderthals. So we see it in graves, but we don't. I don't think we found any evidence, the direct evidence that they're living together. But they actually must have at some point did things together, because we have Neanderthal DNA within us. But yeah, it's very difficult to prove that we were living. So there's this ambiguity about why did male Neanderthals like female humans, but male humans didn't seem to like female Neanderthals. And it's quite easy to make assumptions about what's going on there. But we just cannot prove it. There could be all sorts of reasons. So, yeah. there's so we just don't know. There's dragon myths all over the world. Xmu says it. So if you want, yes. So I mean, if you just type in, so K27 is a motif about dragon myths, but if you just type in a dragon, well, this is probably going to be huge. You might break the database. There we go. We have 3,000 stories in the database of dragons, pretty much all over the world. Yeah, apart from Australia, where they have serpents. So you put dragons and serpents, you should see some more. But yeah, that's how you find dragon myths. Right. Question. There's another question. Why are there less shown in Northeast America now versus before the update? Because data was corrupt, so it may have misplaced narratives because the data is corrupt. So it's hard to explain, but there's sort of a formatting approach that Bereskin used in his data set, which he keeps in a Word document in effect, or a Russian version of Word document. So it isn't a database as we would see. It's not structured. So when we get this data, which is a large blob of text, we have to try and make sense of it. And sometimes in the first pass of that data, we assigned cultures to the wrong narrative. It happens, but the data now is much higher quality, for certainly for the 1,000 motifs we've done. So we've got 2,100, another 1,000 ready to go once I've done the translations, which is a manual effort. I can't use AI for that, unfortunately, because I tried to and it got it all wrong. Because cultures are really difficult, especially ancient culture names are really difficult to translate properly because they're not common, and there tends to be localized versions of those. So that's been the sort of one of the big issues. Right. So let's see if there's any more questions. Right. So I think that's the basics of what I wanted to talk about. Which is around be careful of distributions and what that really means. So another good example of that, actually, I show in terms of myths is the Earth Diver. Now, this is something I've been challenged about. And if you look at it, it looks like, at first glance, if it's not in Australia and it's not in Africa, but it's in the Americas and Eurasia, you could assume that the narrative started in Eurasia and then travelled over to America in the last glacial maximum, to give you a date of between sort of 55,000 and 15,000 years, which is quite a wide time span. But then if you look at it, you actually see in Western Europe, there is no occurrence of the Earth Diver myth. Now, the Earth Diver is where you've got a duck on the primordial ocean. The lack of data in Europe is interesting because it's typical of other times where you see data lacking in certain things. Things have happened to the culture and history. So Christianization is probably one of them. So we find that the Roman Catholic Church sort of removed the Earth Diver from its stories, but the Orthodox Church has an Earth Diver myth with God and the devil, so that has persisted. If the Orthodox Church hadn't done that, then the Earth Diver myth may not have appeared in Europe at all, and we'd see a cluster in northeast India and into the Indonesia, Philippines, maybe, and the Americas. So yes, it's a deliberate wiping out of what was considered heathen or pagan stories from cultures by the Roman Catholic Church. There's a lot of that happened. So yeah, that say is one of the things I wanted people to be sure about, because I've had a few questions about it, and people have tried to challenge me saying I'm wrong, and how do you know it wasn't America that went into Eurasia? Uh, and as per the Odyssey, I'll repeat it again, it's all probability. It's all probability. We can't say for sure that something's done. We can, unless we've got archaeological evidence, and we can look at genetics of the people telling it and whether they've come from places, and using those together in a phylogenetic sense, looking at linguistic evolution and how things have told and if stories have developed in particular ways, and in the motifs of the story, whether they've developed in particular ways. Only then can we have a better idea of where we think stories have come from, but it's still probabilistic. So anything could have happened. We just, well, when I tell these things, I'm normally telling the most probable outcome. I'm not being dogmatic about it, and I'm quite happy to change my viewpoint if the data comes along. So, something's going on. What's going on in the chat? And people are talking about humans and DNA. What's going on here? How did? Yeah. So, yeah, there's a real problem. So there's a paper by David Reich a couple of weeks ago. I think I mentioned it on the last live stream. We said that Neanderthals could well have been Homo sapiens, but basically Homo sapiens that got isolated, and being isolated and inbreeding cause archaic genomes to become dominant. And so they almost like regressed genetically. Now, I mean, it's not impossible, it's a hypothesis, but I've always been one to think that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens and Denisovans are the same species. We call them different names, and one of the reasons we call them different names is because if you can discover a new species of human, you're going to get lots of research funding. So I think there's some of that going in as well, that there's some headline making stuff going in here, because everybody wants to discover a new type of human or a new dinosaur or whatever. And very often we find that these things aren't new species. They're just, it's either from a different location or they're different parts of the life cycle. So I think it's Triceratops. So dinosaur with three horns, if you're familiar with that. We used to think there was like 30 different versions of that until someone realized actually that most of them were all the same species, just different ages. So there wasn't a small Triceratops and a big Triceratops. There were just one Triceratops which grew up. So, yeah, that was quite interesting. So Josh was asked the question, are there any stories from the Green Sahara period? Sorry, Josh, I didn't see it the first time. Always put question at the front because that helps me spot it as I whiz down, because my chat log is very different to what you see, so I don't see everything. So, the Green Sahara period. So, there will be stories we have that were being told when the Sahara was green. But that doesn't mean they started in the Sahara when it was green, which is sort of what you're asking, I think. Are there any stories that we can say came from the Sahara when it was in its green period? And again, probabilistically, I would say we can't prove that. I wouldn't say it's unlikely, but what we do find certainly in North Africa is that we find stories have come out of Africa into Eurasia, and then we get some sort of like a back migration back into North Africa. So it's like the Eurasians then take their stories into North Africa. So if there were stories that came from the Green Sahara, they may have been erased. If they originated there. Certainly, I have no I can't think of anything that may fit that as an origin. So, no, it's tough. These sort of questions are really tough to answer. It's a lot. And so what I'm doing is really going through my head is, if you give me a story, we can try and work out its origin. But if there are any stories from there, you sort of got to try and look at all different stories on what's come from where. And they're probably stories that come from Egypt, we might see, and they may have started in the Green Saharan period, maybe. I don't know. You got, I'd have to look at that. What about agricultural stories may have come there? Because that's sort of in a similar time frame from when agriculture was being discovered, I believe, if I remember that right. Maybe not the whole Sahara was green, but certainly Egypt was greener. So maybe that there's some kind of agricultural stories there. That's what I would look for. But it's off the top of my head, I couldn't answer that. Funnily enough, Kitty, I think Richard Dawkins was asking today, would anybody mind if we could make a Neanderthal, in effect, use DNA work to try and recreate a Neanderthal, because we know what the genes look like. So are they really gone if we can make them? I don't know. It depends what you think of really gone means. Right. So, Nora, hello and good evening. Don't mess with genes is probably the moral of the story there, because can anything go right by doing that? I don't know. I mean, so when animals go extinct in particular regions, is it wrong to bring them back from other regions into that region? Because is that any different? And there are benefits for doing that. I mean, in Britain, we've introduced beavers, for example, and in the limited capacity we've done that, they seem to have been beneficial. But equally, there's other animals that just haven't done that. So I don't know. I don't know. But I don't think there'd be any good that comes from having a live Neanderthal walking around. I feel that could be problematic. So here's another question from Farsight. I heard a theory that myths of human sacrifice and harsh punishing gods may have arisen as a response to the vanishing of the Green Sahara and worsening climate. When something bad happens, we normally see more extreme ritual behavior. And so if people are reliant on a Green Sahara and it loses its fertility, that's a problem because people have to migrate. And it's a problem because if people are there during the agricultural periods, they are used to getting food from the land, where before that people were used to walking around. So if there are those stories, I think, like I sort of suggested earlier, they're possibly from the agricultural period, but I do not believe those, because we talk about ritual behaviours rather than specific stories, but I don't believe they are specific to the Sahara, so it would be really difficult to determine the origin. I mean, probabilistically, could they have started in the Sahara? I'd say it's more likely they would have started in the Near East or Mesopotamia, because that's where we see a lot of stories, but that's also because we have the best records of stories from there. I mean, we do have great records for Egypt, but not really for the rest of the Sahara. So, like many things, I mean, this is the problem we have with Africa, is that there are probably some really old, incredible stories in the heart of Africa. You go to the Congo, or and deep within Central Africa, and yet, even if we noted narratives, we couldn't prove that they're old at all. That we couldn't prove they're more than 100 years old if they weren't written down or recorded before. We've only got probability. It's a real shame we have lost 99.9% of our knowledge. and so it's hard. It's hard to prove, and that's we're sort of stuck with that. Right. There's another question. Sorry. So, Josh, hello, Josh. What do you think about the sightings of black panthers in the UK? I've seen sightings of large black cats. I've seen people about that. Whether they're panthers or not, because I think are black panthers just black jaguars? I'm not quite too sure of the whole thing, what they really are. So I maybe occasionally one of them might be an escaped pet. But also I do think there are some wild cats around, and wild cats tend to be a lot bigger than domestic cats. So it's I'm open-minded. I do not believe we have a colony of black panthers. If there is a black cat wandering around, it is because it is escaped and a one-off. Not that we've got any secret. What do you call a group of cats? On a bundle, let's call them a bundle of cats. There's probably a term for it. But yes, so that's what I think of that. Right. So, right, Farsight talking about archaeology where you might be able to see a shift in sacrifices and such. Yeah, it's hard, Farsight. We need more info. We need to be clear on what we're looking at and what sort of things, and then make a decision. Doing it so broadly is really challenging. Really challenging. Right, there is another question. Hello, Wild Spec. Which element was sacred first that we know of? I always assumed water, but I suspect fire or earth may be indicated in the written stories. That's a really interesting question. I would say, in terms of sacredness, fire is probably it. And then water. And then when metal came along, the metals. But fire probably the first one. And it has been around a long, long time, I mean, hundreds of thousands of years. So, yeah, that's a great question, though, but it's hard to prove. But that would be my gut feel. Young Matt is here. Everybody say hello to Matt. Subscribe to Ancient Architects. Right, some wonderful ancient architect type stories. I'm surprised he's not playing darts. But it's great to see you, Matt. Oh, lots of exotic animals were released by Victorians. Yeah, they're probably dead now. But yes, I'm sure there's that. I'm sure in the 70s there was quite a lot of it as well. What was that show on Netflix with the tigers? And tigers were popular and all sorts. So yeah, it's possible, as I say, but there'd probably be one-offs rather than. I don't think there are proper groups of interbreeding panthers in the UK outside of a zoo. Vithar has a question. Do you think Israel is primarily made up of Europeans who believe they lost the tribe from Exodus, which never happened, by actual Seminites? Oh, right, no, I'm not going to. I won't answer that. That's looking for trouble. This is a politic-free channel, right? Another question, right? Saint Samson of Dol slays a dragon by his moral authority, no weapon, in the apocryphal Bell and the Dragon. Daniel uses no bladed weapon. Was that a meme as Zoroastrianism? I don't know where Samson originated from. So that may determine if he was a divine being of a previous religion. I don't think. I think that's just a way of saying that a divine word is powerful, which seems to be a very, I would argue, Near Eastern trait, because we see the gods say things and they happen. I mean, it could also be argued then that it is a later Abrahamic thing, which may have moved on. But I don't know Saint Samson of Dol enough to determine that. Let me see if I can just do a quick Google to see if Google tells me. A Welsh saint. Yeah, then I definitely, it's a later, to me, my gut feel would be it's a later Abrahamic thing based on the fact that God's word is powerful. And that is all. Yes. These are questions I don't think I can answer, really. Do I think human sacrifice in secret societies still exist that are from the ancient world? I think there are some very, how can I put this? People are very different. Everybody's different. Everybody has different beliefs, different degrees. Is it possible there are people who would be willing to do human sacrifice in the name of something they believe in and call it a secret society / weird religion? Possibly. Possibly. Certainly, there are certainly human sacrifices, I believe, in more remote cultures. And we do see, I don't know the exact details, but we do see, we had I think an incident in the UK some years ago where I think it might have been a boy was found without, it's just his torso been killed as part of a ritual for some reason. So yeah, there are still people who do stupid things in the name of a religion, in my opinion. I'm not even going out there to, right, let me look at any decent questions. Oh, some people to know who. Oh, right, here's a question. Matt can answer that. We've been here, Matt and I. How old is that underground city in Turkey? Yeah, so people call it a city. I have to be honest, it wasn't very city-ish. It's just some underground tunnels and living spaces that was used, and you probably could fit maybe 100 people in there. I wonder if Matt knows. Is he? Let me. Matt, we may have lost Matt. That is an interesting one. So what's that? I don't even know the name of that city off the top of my head. So if you go, so Matt does tours with NEXT to Turkey, and they go to the city. This city, they call it Derinkuyu. Oh, right. So it's multiple underground things in the same region, which is why they call it city, which they believe could have held up to 20,000 people. Wow. Dating back 500 BC, so 2,500 years. Wow. I should have paid more attention. Certainly the bit we went in, it was probably 4 or 5 stories deep, and there was only a few living spaces, each maybe 2 to 4 meters square each one, so maybe 10 to 20 feet square. Interesting, little bit claustrophobic, especially when you got to the bottom and you had to go down these small tunnels only one way. It was certainly worth going, worth a visit. Turkey with Matt and NXT is a fantastic trip. I may go again one day. Yeah, so right. Let's see if we can get back on course. Can't see any more questions. Please, I can't. I'm looking for serious questions. Oh, right, here's a deep question from Whistlegum. What are your thoughts on the possibility and probability that patriarchal systems were as a reaction to the psychological recognition of female power? A reaction to them. I think women have always been pretty powerful in society until religion gets hold. Certain religions get hold. I think, in that they give birth, which is an incredibly sacred thing. They're often considered more important and more valuable. So, uh, I the patriarchy came about because I think the environment was, everything comes down to environment and society, but the environment was tougher and harsher and needed more warriors. And I think that probably swung it more than, I'd say, a psychological issue. But it's hard to tell because there's so many different examples of this where we see matriarchy go to patriarchy and patriarchy to matriarchy. But yes, I don't know why, but there's probably some insecure male somewhere who needed to do something to prove himself. Right. I think Matt has gone, so he won't get the answer to the underground question. Question: when did the Abrahamic traditions begin? So we're probably talking the start of the first millennium BC, I would argue, that sort of time frame. So let's say 900 to 1000 BC is my understanding, in terms of Old Testament stories starting to happen. They're not written down to about 600, I think 650, some of them, but yeah, I think they're already starting to take the shape we would recognize at that point. So yes, and we get to the end of the questions and the chat, and my voice is about to go. So I want to say thank you for your questions. Say the chat did go a bit wild today. I don't know what's going on. Perhaps there's a full moon due or something. I don't know. But thank you for your questions, and thank you for your support. Thank you for listening. We didn't really talk too much, but I just wanted to make sure you all understood folklore database, what distributions meant, and we can't necessarily read in what we want to read into them. The obvious thing may not be the actual thing that's going on, and everything is probabilistic. That was my hope. But I hope I did a little bit of that to some of you. Hope you like the story, the doe and the bear, the she bear. I'll try and make that my next video because it's a fantastic, interesting story. We should try and make it popular again. I think that's something you should go away with. Try and tell at least 10 people that story and make it famous. And with that, please take care of yourselves. I say I'm going to take a week or so off, because it's been a tough month or two for me. So with that, I probably won't live stream now till, I'm going to guess, May. I'll do a live stream back in May. Now, if I do a live stream in May, I may have a special guest who's coming to stay with me. An academic, someone who works occasionally for the Crick Institute and has done papers with David Reich. He's coming over and wants to stay. So if that happens, we'll see if we can put him on and do a live stream for you with him. But I'll keep that as a surprise for now, just in case it doesn't happen, but I hope it does. I've also, actually, there's other news I told you. If you live in Norway, I don't think I saw any Norwegians here. Have been asked to give some talks in Norway at Green Thumb. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Really do. Wow. That's a lot of money. Thank you. Yeah, I'm doing a talk in Norway. I've sort of lost where my friend's fault. Um, I think it's 1st of July, but I'll post that somewhere. So if you live in Norway near Oslo, there's a large Viking festival, and I've been asked to go along to talk about dragons and things there. So I'll let you know about that. And so, yes, with that, thank you, Green Thumb. Thank you, Helen and Sean, are 2 patrons I recognise. Thank you for all the other people I've recognised who come here a lot. I really appreciate that. So I probably won't talk to you guys till May on this. If I can get a video out before then, I will. Yes, I may. If I can't get a video out, I may just record that story I told you in a fuller way and throw it out there as a YouTube short or something. People love that. Maybe not. I don't know. But yes, with that, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to talk to you and answer questions or try and answer questions. Some of your questions were quite left field, but yeah, I love folklore and mythologies. So yes, take care and speak to you all as soon as I can. Toodle pip.